Hagane: The Final Conflict is an action platformer title made for the Super Famicom and the Super Nintendo. It was released in Japan in 1994 and in North America and Europe in 1995, respectively. It was developed by CA Production and was published by Red Entertainment and Hudson Soft. This game has gotten a good deal of attention over the past decade or so due to being extremely sought after in the game collecting crowd. It has gotten incredibly expensive over the years, and the price hasn't seemed to stop going up. So, is the game worth all this hype? Well, let's dive in and find out. The story behind Hagane in a nutshell is that there are two warring clans called Fuma and Koma. The Fuma clan's purpose is to protect the Holy Grail because it holds a power that could destroy the entire world if it falls into the wrong hands. So of course, the bad guys in this story, the Koma clan, steal the Holy Grail and massacre the Fuma clan in the process. Thankfully, one of the members of the Fuma clan survives, but just barely. His name is Hagane, and his brain is placed into a cyborg body by an old man named Momochi. He vows to get revenge on the Koma clan, and that is where the game begins. The gameplay in Hagane has a really fast pace to it, much like the Ninja Gaiden and Shinobi games, but Hagane has plenty of extra tricks up his sleeve. In addition to having an extremely fast sword attack, Hagane can also use kunai, grenades, and a grappling hook. The kunai and grenades have a limited number of uses, but can be refilled from item drops that are dropped by dead enemies. Hagane can also use a bomb-like special attack that fills the screen with plenty of flashing lights and colors, as well as damage to all the enemies on screen. Not only that, but Hagane can do somersaults to the left or right that can lead to insanely powerful punches and kicks. Hagane will flash a different color with each additional flip, and each flash will bring about a different attack. Some of these can absolutely destroy enemies as well as bosses in a single attack, so they are incredibly useful. The best thing about all of these somersault attacks is that they can be done infinitely because they don't require any extra power to use. Somersaults can also be used as a dodge, but the invincibility window is kinda small, so it takes a little bit of practice to get used to that. Another fun attack that helps fight against enemies that are below Hagane during a jump is the dive kick. This allows Hagane to bounce off an enemy's head over and over until they are destroyed. Hagane also has a horizontal air roll that can be done right after a jump, and this is important to learn as well since there are some jumps that just can't be made without doing this move. All that is needed is proper timing. The only downside to this move is that if the player waits too long before pressing jump again after the initial jump, the roll move won't come out, which can sometimes be frustrating and lead to some instant deaths during platforming. Hagane can even do a slide, and this helps avoid certain projectile attacks or helps the player get across certain sections of the stage very quickly. The only real issue I would say I had with the controls besides the roll jump timing is that Hagane's standard jump is really floaty feeling and can make precise platforming a bitch at first. All in all though, I found the mobility and attack options to be really great to play with, and once the player gets used to all of these options that are available, they will be able to just fly through the game and make it look easy. The stages are filled to the brim with enemies and hazards that can send the player to the game over screen really quickly. There are spikes, giant worms, ninjas, birds, laser cannons, missiles, turrets, samurai, and so much more that the player has to deal with on their journey through this game. As the game begins, Hagane can only take 3 hits and then a life is lost. The number of hit points can be raised by blue flame pickups dropped randomly, and even found in certain spots during stages. The max amount of hit points that can be had are 5, so even though this adds a bit of breathing room, it's not much. The downside is that after a death, hit points get reset back to 3. There are also orange flame pickups that can replenish health, but it only adds back 1 hit per pickup. This game is pretty damn tough at first. There are also life pickups that can add an extra life, and finding one of these might make you shout for joy because this game can be a real bastard sometimes. Also, I'm not really sure why, but some versions of the game I've played only have 3 continues, and other ones have unlimited continues. The crazy thing is that I've played both the Japanese and North American versions, where some had limited continues and some didn't. It's really strange. This game is not easy, so I recommend that if you're able and the game doesn't have unlimited continues on the copy you play, maybe use save states until you can beat it normally. Otherwise, you might lose some hair from stress. So while some versions of this game might lack continues, one thing they don't lack are boss fights. There are plenty of them in this game. Some of them will come at the end of a stage section, and others will be the entire section of the stage just by themselves. I found the bosses to be mostly memorable and fun to fight. There are 1 or 2 though that can be incredibly stressful and tough if you don't have their patterns learned completely. This is one reason I recommended the save states for the first time through. I really liked the amount of variety that the boss fights offer, honestly. None of them felt too samey, and they all felt like fair fights. Plus, once you learn some of the special attacks that Hagane can do, you could just melt some of the bosses instantly, and it's such a badass feeling. The level design is one of those complaints that I've seen from some other reviews, but I found the stages to be a lot of fun with the exception of a few small spots. But me not enjoying these sections mainly just had to do with the fact that I forgot about having a grappling hook that allowed Hagane to hang from the ceiling and avoid certain obstacles, or to get to higher ground. I made things so much harder on myself my first few times through this game as a result of this. The graphics in Hagane are pretty good. There are some cool scaling backgrounds as well as some Mode 7 effects during an auto-scroller stage that look pretty nice. The game itself has a rather dark tone to it, so the game doesn't have a lot of bright colors or anything like that. The stages present a bleak, mechanical, and futuristic tone that might not be appealing to some players, but for me I thought it was great. I'm a big fan of games that have a lot of dark atmosphere. The sprites are nice, well detailed, and have some really smooth animations, which is great. There was some occasional slowdown here and there, but for the most part I felt like things were really smooth. The sounds in the game are just kinda meh. They sound muffled for the most part, and they just aren't very interesting. Thankfully they aren't harsh or anything like that, but most of them just don't really stand out in a good way. The music is kind of a mixed bag as well. There are some tunes that I really like due to having catchy melodies, but there are some others that just seem to be all over the place. It definitely isn't a soundtrack that I would put on while I'm working or anything. It's not bad or anything, but it's also not great. So, would I recommend Hagane? Well, I think that if you like challenging action platforming games, then you just might have a fun time with Hagane. It's honestly one of my favorite Super Nintendo games to play now, and it's one that I think a lot of people would enjoy. The only real downside is trying to find a copy of the game. The North American version can go for several $100s currently, and the Japanese version is increasing in price as well, even though it's more affordable. I would say most people's best bet to playing this currently would be through emulation or even a repro cart. I hope that this game gets released digitally in some form, and it would be also incredible if someone like Limited Games could do a re-release. So, if you like what you see in the gameplay, definitely check this game out for sure.